This is the Outback Recordings Podcast, session 25. And even though the intro you're about to hear will still be in German, this episode is actually an English one. So stay tuned.
Willkommen zum Outback Recordings Podcast, der Show für die Punkrock- und Hardcore-Community. Inspirierende Menschen, wertvolle Einblicke und spannende Stories präsentiert von eurem Host Benedikt Hain.
Hello and welcome to the show. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Benedikt Hain. I am your host. I'm a music producer, mixing engineer, working out of Outback Recordings, the studio that has the same name as this show. We specialize in punk rock, hardcore, and heavy guitar music, if you will, in our studio. And that's just the scene that I grew up in, the music that I've made myself with my bands, and the music and subculture and scene that I've loved for so many years now. That's why this show is also about this scene, this subculture. And I'm talking to interesting, cool people that I've met over the years. I enjoy an hour or two of those conversations every week, and I thought this would be a great opportunity to share our conversations with you. So that's basically why I do this podcast and what this podcast is all about. I don't do English episodes very often. It's usually my guests are from Germany or German-speaking countries. But this episode is an exception because my guest today is the wonderful Willem Heijmans. And I'm sure I completely butchered his name, but I don't know how to pronounce it correctly. He's the vocalist and guitarist of the Dutch punk rock band Antillectual, which is a name that you've probably heard of because they are one of the hardest working bands that I know. They are touring all the time, seemingly. They have been to so many countries. They've played so many shows. They are constantly putting out new stuff. They are always working their asses off to reach their audience, to get their message across to... I'm pretty sure they've played somewhere near where you live and or played with some of your favorite bands. Besides that, they just put out really awesome music, write great, meaningful lyrics. They are politically active and vocal about their opinions. And I just think of them as a staple in the European punk rock scene. And also, on top of that, as all of my guests, basically, they are just great human beings. And every time I've met with them, every time I talk to them at a show, they're just awesome dudes, and you can have a good time with them. So I think it's inspiring to watch them do what they do, and I'm very excited to be able to share this conversation with you. So without further ado, here comes my conversation with Willem Heijmans. Hi, Willem. Thanks for taking the time and hanging out with me for a bit today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, cool to have you. Maybe you start off by introducing yourself. Could you please just give us some information about you, what you're doing with your band and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, sure. I'm Willem. I play in a Dutch punk rock band called Antillectual. We're a three-piece. We started... It's always difficult to explain how we started, but our first album came out in 2005, and that's around the same time we started touring as well. Our last album is from 2016, and right now we're touring, but we're also recording separate songs and releasing them as singles. So we've stepped away from the album release business and started doing single songs, and that's where we're right now. So we've been busy over like almost 15 years, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah.
And we make like a melodic type of punk rock, not unlike, I'm going to say we're big fans of bands like Propaganda and Strike Anywhere, Hot Water Music, that type of stuff. So I hope that introduces us a bit.
I think it does very well, actually. Propaganda is actually the band that comes to mind first when I think of your music and lyrics and how that plays together. I think your writing style and all that has, to me at least, always sounded as it was influenced by Propaganda, at least to me. So, and I like that because Propaganda is one of my favorite bands and you have your own take on that style of music. So that's cool.
Thanks. Yeah, I consider that a compliment. And I mean, Propaganda is one of those bands that I started. I started playing their songs even before we were our own band. So from that, I learned a lot about playing guitar, but also about writing songs. And I think that influences us as a band still to this day. So that's a compliment if you see that as an influence.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I don't see it as a ripoff at all, because it's not the same. It's your own take on that. But it's just it's just the first band that comes to mind that's kind of in the same genre, or like the way. I think especially the way you write your songs kind of reminds me of Propaganda sometimes. I don't know why that is, but I don't know. Like, that's just me, and I like that. What's personally to me, and you've already said it in your introduction, one thing that always stood out to me about Antillectual, about your band, is that I've always seen you as one of the hardest working bands in the whole punk rock scene, especially here in Europe, but also like worldwide. I don't think there are many bands who are more present and out there and working hard than you are. And I've always admired that. I've always thought that's really cool. And over such a long period of time, this is very impressive, really. I've always wondered actually where that drive comes from and what keeps you going, and what I can never imagine like being in a band. Like that's not really a business or something to live off of, like it's not as huge as bands where you can say, okay, that's the only thing that I'm doing. To keep going like that for such a long period of time in a niche like the punk rock world is just impressive to me. I'm just wondering, like, where does that come from? Where do you get the motivation, the drive, and what keeps you going?
Yeah, well, again, thanks. I consider that a compliment as well. Hardworking band. It's a difficult question, because I sometimes also think, just besides the fact that I like doing what we do, you have to stay motivated and to be aware of your motivation as well. So I think as long as you can do other stuff, new stuff, and as long as you can have a different approach to things like touring, but also to recording and releasing music, I think that's the way to keep it interesting. And one of the things, even though those were not our own choices, have been the lineup changes that we had. We've had a lot of bass players in our band over the last 15 years. And even I'm very thankful that we're stable with Tone on bass right now. That did, it was a very interesting way of keeping things fresh and keeping things new and working with new people and finding a new dynamic and a new vibe in the band. And I think for writing music, that made it interesting, but also for touring, you're on the road with new people and you get to do, you might go to the same city and play the same venue, but hopefully there's more people there and you're with not a new band, but you're there with a new setup, a new lineup of the band. So that makes it a little fresh as well, even though it's never, a reason to change lineups because it makes it fresh. So it was never our choice to change band members. But I think that's one of the factors that keep it interesting. But yeah, as said, as long as you can do things differently and as long as you experience growth, no matter how vague that term is, as long as you experience that, it makes it interesting. And also because we get the chance to go to new places as well as go back to old places, that's what's really nice as well. It's not officially out there, but we're gonna go to Turkey and to Finland in October and November, and both countries we've never been to before, and especially to Turkey, I had never had the idea or the illusion that we would ever go there to play music, because I didn't know about the punk rock scene there, and maybe it hasn't been around for a long time. Again, it's our first time, so we'll see. But those are things that make it just interesting to be a band and to keep doing stuff. Yeah, I think we have slowed down a bit in the last year, also because Tone, our bass player, had big internship he had to do, so we were not as flexible as before. But now that is done, we might be on the road a bit more than we were last year. So, all those things keep it interesting to be a band and be active and work hard, as you say.
Yeah, makes total sense. Still, it's impressive because, you all have to balance your stuff and your life besides the band with what you're doing in the band. And that's, as you said, like there's things like internships or jobs or like everybody has stuff outside of the music and the band stuff. How do you balance that? How did you make time to tour as much and to be able to pull that off during the last couple of years? Was that a conscious? Of course, it was probably a conscious decision to just make the band a priority, but how did you actually realize that? How did you make that a reality?
Well, I think we kind of snowballed into that, but I think there's a change of approach from 2005, because we already were a band before that time, but it was with a different lineup. And in 2005, we released our first album, like the full length, and we said, okay, what are we going to do? Are we just going to release the album, and are we going to see what it does, or are we going to do our best we can and see what we can get out of this? So we decided to do the latter. We started touring, and I think it's a matter of dedication and of priority, and also really a choice. If you decide to be a full-time band, it just takes a lot of effort. But again, it's a choice to do that or to not do that. Yeah, it's a difficult matter, but because I'm not going to say that everyone that works hard for it, that's not a guarantee on its own. We're very lucky that there's people that like our music and want to have us over to their city to play for them, or that want to buy our records and stuff. So you need, to be lucky and, have some minimum level of talent or something. I don't know. But I think just working hard and putting your blood, sweat and tears into it will get you very far. And like Tone, he's studying at the moment. Rikus, our drummer, he has a almost full-time job next to it, but he puts most of his free time, into rehearsals or tours on off days. And, behind the scenes, he works on the digital side of things a lot for us. So, it takes a lot of dedication to do it. But I think it's the only way. At least for a European band, touring Europe, there's not really another option if you just want to do the band to the full.
Absolutely agree, especially as a European band. Because I still think, while there are some bigger bands, but I still think it's a little more difficult maybe here in Europe compared to the big US bands. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Like that's what you got to do. Honestly, I think you're not only working hard, part of it is also you are pretty smart and very aware of how you can reach your audience and how you can spread your message that's important to you. I don't know of many bands who are doing this as well as you do, because you do things like, you have a newsletter that you're constantly sending out, but it's not a salesy, like weird kind of newsletter, but you do it in a cool way. And there is also like the fact that you went away from producing full-length albums and releasing the singles and videos. This is just a smart decision considering how people consume music nowadays. And I know that it's kind of, not everybody will like that, because many people are still record collectors or think that's just a stupid modern thing and not cool. But you are not afraid of trying new things in order to get your message out and spread the word. This is really something not many people know how to do as well as you do. And I think that's also part of why that works for you, because you're just aware of those things and are not afraid to try them. And I think that's also sets Antillectual apart from many other bands.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that's very kind again. No, of course, working hard and being a little smart about it. But that part also keeps it interesting for us. If you keep doing the same thing over and over again, you will get bored. I mean, whether it's your working job or whether it's a band, that works the same. So we, not only work hard, but also be a bit smart or strategic or whatever you want to call it about it. But we try to avoid to be cheesy or, commercial, as you said, with our newsletter. Yeah, no, definitely. That's just not who we are or would like to be. So we try to stay away from that. But that's the interesting part about being a musician now. I mean, I would love to have the record sales or the royalties or whatever that were from the 90s, from when a lot of punk rock bands could really live just directly from their music and from what they do. But on the other hand, for us, it's so much easier. As I said, I did not expect to be going to Turkey, but I think bands in the 90s, not many would have had the option to go to Turkey, for instance. And I think now through the internet, we can go there and we can probably have some people there that already know our music. So that's amazing. And I enjoy being a musician now over being a musician in the 90s, I think. Even though I wasn't one back then, obviously. But I think I really appreciate the pros of this era. So let's make use of them, and that's what we try to do with our band as well.
Exactly. I think there's never been a better time to start any like DIY project than today. Be it a band or any other project. Like there's endless opportunity, and it almost doesn't matter anymore where you live. That's just awesome, and I see that as a great opportunity for anybody and as a way like for people to connect and spread like messages and exchange. That's just a cool thing, and that's also a really cool thing for bands if you are aware of it and make great use of it. Because if you're like stuck in the past and just hold on to how it was, then you can do that, of course, but you're gonna have a tough time compared to the bands who adapt to how people communicate these days and consume content. So
yeah, very true. Yeah.
Speaking of the thing with the singles and videos, you've got a new single coming out.
Yes,
soon?
we do. Yeah, July 9.
Yeah, it's called If You're Not Outraged.
Yeah.
And I had a listen and I read the lyrics, and I think this is so important. Tell us maybe a bit about the single. Tell us what's behind the lyrics and also maybe the music.
Well, the title, If You're Not Outraged, You're Not Paying Attention, is creatively derived from the last Facebook post that Heather Hayes made. And Heather Hayes is the anti-fascist protester that was killed in Charlottesville when there was a big fascist rally, actually, and there was a big anti-fascist rally to oppose that. And she was run over by a car, and she died in that protest. So, extremely sad that it has come that far. And of course, most people know Donald Trump's reaction to that, saying that there were two sides to that story, and that, there's good people on both sides, I think he said. And I know that a lot of people agree with that, or they see anti-fascist action or anti-fascism as something that is just as evil as fascism. And I have a hard time understanding that, even though I do agree or understand that some people don't agree with all anti-fascist actions. I mean, of course, you have different approaches and different ideas or opinions on how you should resist against fascism. But I think, in essence, like everyone or most people are anti-fascist because you're against fascism, and of course it started, or the biggest anti-fascist organization, or I don't know how to call it, but it was the resistance in World War II. And I think there's nobody saying, well, I think the resistance in World War II, they were a bit too harsh. I don't really approve of their methods and of what they achieved and what they were fighting for. So I think it's a bit weird or inconsistent to be criticizing anti-fascism in general, because I think they're fighting a good fight or standing for something, positive. So this song is an ode to anti-fascism, supporting that and just being critical of, saying there's good people or bad people on both sides, and they're just two sides of the same medal. I don't agree with that. I think anti-fascism is something valuable and something worth supporting.
Absolutely. It has to be a core part of society and of everybody. It's not something only extremists do or believe in. Absolutely.
No, yeah, exactly. That's the point. Yeah.
And I said I think it's so important today. And I said that because I just can't believe how it's even possible that in this day and age that this is even such a big thing again, and that right-wing extremists, right-wing politicians become so popular again, that those populists are so successful with what they do. That kind of puzzles me, because our generation is as wealthy, healthy, and secure as basically no generation before us, at least in our quote-unquote Western world. I can only really speak from my perspective here in Germany, and I know that's certainly not the case for everybody. But we in general are in a very, very good place, and we should be very thankful for that and do everything we can to keep it like that and to use our resources and our privileges to make that the status quo for everybody. And that should be the goal. And instead of doing that, and instead of using our resources and all that we have, we are listening to idiots who want to divide us and spread hate and make the gap between the rich and poor even greater. And I'm not sure where that actually comes from. That kind of puzzles me how that's even possible.
Yeah.
That's why I think it's so important to spread that message, unfortunately.
Yeah, no, I agree. Even though I do understand that people have concerns and that people are worried, but populists use the fear and the threat of, things getting worse over a globalizing world. People that might not be in too much trouble right now will be in much trouble if, a lot of migrants come to our country and take over our jobs and our sons and daughters and, who knows what. And I think, the world is changing, of course. It always is. And with a more globalizing society and the African population doubling within the next something years, of course, it makes sense that those people are looking for a better place to live. And that will at least threaten the status quo in Europe. And if you don't take that seriously, I understand that people are worried, but it really depends on the approach. Are you willing to solve that problem and make it work for everybody and maybe improve the situation in Africa or where the people are fleeing from, or are you only willing to create borders and spread hatred and polarize societies? So you can win more votes. I'm afraid that's the situation we're living in right now, and what the right wing is really gaining from also, because in the 90s, and then I'm talking about the Dutch situation, but I think that goes for a lot of European countries, like the social democratic parties started working together with either Christian parties or liberal parties, and they really supported like the neoliberal, the free market system. And so a lot of people feel like they were sold out by leftist or social democratic parties, and now they think, okay, they're not going to help us fight these new threats that we're facing right now. So let's see what these populists who say they have our interest at heart, how they can help us. And putting up borders, it's a really simple idea, and maybe it works this time. Maybe they can help us out. I don't believe it, but I do understand why a lot of people are worried and why some of them either believe populist ideas or give it, a go right now, because, social democrats haven't really helped them out in the last couple of decades. So I do understand how a change of views and how a change of heart has come to exist, basically.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that makes sense. Maybe I view it that way because where I live, I live kind of in the absolute middle of nowhere. Zwiesel. You've played Zwiesel, and it's in the Bavarian forest, like hundreds of kilometers away from a really big city. And I've been to a lot of big cities and to a lot of countries. I've been traveling a lot, so I have more perspective than most of the people who live here. But I think what I wanted to say is what's so strange to me is that those people who really support that kind of stuff are, most of the time, at least here, are the people who have never even met a single person from a different country or even sometimes from out of their own town.
Yeah.
Those are typically here the people who are the most afraid, who are voting for those parties. And that's the part that I don't understand. Why are these people who have never experienced any issue with it at all, why are those the people who are the most afraid?
I think it's fear to have a change of the status quo. I think probably. If you live in Zwiesel or anywhere in the Bavarian woods, you have a safe, protected life from other influences, being cultural or economic. I mean, you have a protected life if you live there. And, if other people come to your place, your area, it might change. And I think, that's a danger they fear. And that's why they will vote for conservative parties or populist parties at worst. And in the bigger cities, it's the people who are less privileged who actually see their jobs being taken away by foreigners, as the credo is. And I understand why they vote for populist parties, but I understand half of it, because I understand their problem and their concerns, but I don't think that the answers and the solutions that the populists, in general, offer them are the ones to go with. I think they don't work, or if they work, they only work temporarily, and the worst part is they only help. Or they only work for the people in their country, and it doesn't help the world or bigger parts of the world in general at all. They consider it a zero-sum game. If our population wins, it doesn't matter that the rest loses. And I think that's a shitty attitude. So I wouldn't. Yeah, that's why I don't support that at all.
Yeah. Absolutely. And what do you think, not as politicians, but just we in everyday life as individuals, what can we do to make being anti-fascist a normal thing again? And how can we be smart about that? How can we change the culture in our everyday life? What do you think? What are ways to do that?
That's a very, very, very good question. I think expressing what you think is one of the key things to do. I mean, it's also hard because, in my direct circle of friends, obviously there aren't many fascists. So, it's not that I'm fighting anti-fascism within my circle of friends or within my family or something. In your private life, it's hard. I think stay vocal, just talk about what is bad about fascism. Really, the really easy thing, because there's so much to say about it. So when you hear people say, and it's, as I said, I don't have many hardcore fascists in my group of friends, but even, there's a sliding scale of people making slightly racist jokes or, making jokes about immigrants, or I don't know. If you hear that around you, just, say something about it and try to raise awareness about, maybe it's a funny joke now, but in the end, it supports the idea of immigrants and other minorities in general being lesser humans or second-class citizens in our countries. So yeah, if you give a signal that it's not okay to do stuff like that, I think that helps in your private life. Also, don't vote for populist parties. I mean, it's very obvious, but it also means do vote for other parties, because I know that a lot of people also don't vote or don't support voting or the government, which I completely understand. But I also, and that's why I've always voted whenever I could, because I understand that I'm in a privileged position that if I don't go and vote, and then not much will change in my life, because I'm a white male in a Dutch society, and no matter what party is in charge here, I will not suffer much from it. I will not be deported, and I will not lose my job or whatever. But I do still vote, and I do vote for parties to hope that other groups of people, minorities, that their rights will be secured and that they will not suffer from hatred or violence or threats or whatever. So I think voting is a part of that as well. To be honest, we didn't write the song because we think that, well, whenever we write that song, we will fight fascism and all Nazis will change their minds. I think it would be great if they did, and it's beautiful if you can convert people's minds. But I also think that writing political songs is also a way of supporting people who already share your beliefs. And I think that's equally important, to support a scene that's already on your side, or the scene that you're already a part of, just to make sure that other people who share your beliefs know that they're not alone, and that they have other people fighting the same cause, and that other people share your beliefs, and that that there's a sense of unity and of solidarity. And that's without converting people to change their minds, but just supporting the people who already changed their minds or have their minds in the same position that you have. So I think it works, two ways, writing political songs in general.
Absolutely. And I also think that this is just a way of doing it in a positive, constructive way, like building a community within our scene. And like all the things we do here are just positive, constructive things. And that's the best way to change anything. I think or at least to me, it's better than constantly being destructive or frustrated. And I view this whole community and music thing and making songs for, even if the people already, as you said, already know what you're talking about or have the same opinion, it's just still important to have that, and to have like events like the shows that we go to, and because from that, I think spreads everything else. That's the breeding ground for all the stuff that people go on to do then and do in their individual lives. And I think that's just important and a very constructive and positive thing to do. So
yeah, for sure. Have
you always been a political band, or did you get into this for that reason mostly, or was it more the music? How did you get into the whole punk rock thing, and what was the idea behind founding this band?
We've always been a political band, I think, because I'm a political person. I mean, I've been interested in politics ever since I started to understand what the news was about. And I really, I think in not kindergarten, but the basic elementary school, is it? I think I already made like a project about anarchy and stuff like that, because it sounded really interesting to me. So I've always had the interest for politics. And when I discovered...
Hold on just a second, sorry. But sure. I have to ask there, because that's totally interesting to me. When you say in elementary school, did that come from your parents? I'm asking because I have I have two childs. One is 4 years old and one is 9 months old. That's obviously a question that I ask myself all the time. How, like, you want to be a good parent, and I hope my kids will be open-minded and, like, you know, that's interesting to me. When you say you've already discovered that in elementary school, what did your parents do?
How to raise a proper anarchist? No.
Yes, exactly.
I'm not sure if it was the last classes of elementary school or the first ones of high school. I don't want to argue about that. But no, I wasn't really raised political, to be honest. Ooh, that's some history and of psychology there. I really don't know how that came about, because I think it just really sparked for me personally. And, my dad did have like an interest in politics, but he never really tried to push that on me or anything. So I didn't directly get it from him. Gee, I might not have an answer to this question.
That's even more interesting than
I don't know, but it really, I've always been interested in politics, and I'm completely blank about why that is. But I know that I've had it for many years already, and it's always been part of me. And also, like, I when I started studying at university, I did like a mix of political science and philosophy. So I really, I stayed being interested in it as well. So it's really something I really love, and that's what I wanted to say. That's why I was really happy when I found out about bands that are political. I mean, because when you grow up as a teenager and you listen to the radio or even you start listening to loud music, that's really nice, but it doesn't get political very quickly. So I was really happy when I found out about bands like Propaganda and Strike, and where having something more to say than the average band. And I'm really thankful that I got to discover those type of bands. And that's also where we started being a political band. When we started this band, we were saying, well, what do we want to do? What do we want to write about? And of course, since we loved bands writing about political stuff, it only makes sense to do it ourselves as well. And that's how that started. And I still feel comfortable writing about political stuff because it's an outlet. It's a way to express what I feel, at least, and the rest shares it, of course. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it. But I think it's a nice medium, a nice way to express what I think. And that's also an answer to the other question. You said, what can you do to be anti-fascist in your personal life? I think, being in a band and spreading that message for me is a personal way of being political. And this band is a political medium for me. So that's why I love being in this band and writing about political stuff. Yeah, I'm not sure if that's an answer to the question. It still doesn't explain why I was always interested in politics. I'm gonna ask my mom when that started or when that came about. Yeah,
I think it comes down to, like, if you're curious and if you're, like, allowed to be creative, curious, and just open for different things. I think that's just very important. I don't think you gain much by just forcing somebody or a kid to believe something. I think it's good to be supportive and, of course, answer questions and just support kids, but when they are curious and want to find out about things, and, like, that's just really important, I think. So,
definitely. Yes.
Yeah. So as you got into this, did you start, you've kind of touched on this already, but as soon as you started the band, you made that decision. You want to really serious and see where you can go with that. How did you start finding shows, promoters, or booking agencies, record labels, etc.? How long did it take you to get to a point where you could really book solid tours and get all the whole machine going?
I'm still not sure if we can book solid tours. No, I mean, it's still hard work to book tours. I think for every band. I mean, but that's another issue. In the beginning of the band, like the really first incarnation and the first time we sat down to rehearse and the first time we sat down to record and get shows, we weren't really as serious as we made that decision years later. So it's not from the exact beginning, because we were just a group of friends that liked the music that we listened to, and we thought, hey, let's try to do that as well. And so it wasn't We didn't really have in mind that we're going to record a full-length album at one point, or that we were going to tour. We were just, having a show at one point would be amazing. So, and this band is my first band. Everything I did with this band was the first time doing stuff for a band. So we really had to learn it from zero, start from zero as well. Sorry, what was your initial question?
How did you go about it in the beginning? How did you find promoters, agencies, labels, all that kind of stuff? Because if it's your first project, then it's even more interesting, that question, because some people have been in bands before and they already have kind of a network or know how things work, but you kind of learned that from scratch.
Yeah, so we invented our own wheel. I mean, I think with your first band, you have to do that. I mean, we booked our first shows ourselves and our first tours as well. And it's just really getting in touch with other bands. I think that's the best tip you can give any starting band. Just, get in touch with other bands and exchange gigs, see if you can play their city, if they can play your city. And if you go touring, it still works that way. So it's very DIY, but I think in the beginning, that's the only way of doing it. Just pay attention to where bands play and who book bands and who release albums and who can help you out. If you have a new album out, who can write about it, or who can book your band, or who can, put you on a playlist these days, stuff like that. Just pay attention and be aware of how things work, or make sure you learn how things work, because, you don't know from the start, obviously. So we're autodidacts, if that makes sense that way.
Totally.
Yeah. No,
totally.
We really started from zero and stumbled our way to some steps higher on the ladder, I guess.
Yeah. What do you think how important it is to add value to others as well and to their bands, and to just help each other out? Like, because that whole thing is not a one-way street, the more you do for others, at least I think the more you do for others and the more you interact within the community, the more people will eventually help you out. And I've always found that those people who are just looking for others to promote their stuff but never do anything in return, that's not the way it works oftentimes. And
no.
What do you think about that?
I completely agree. And I think that people are really interpreting it as a one-way street. I'm sure people will soon find out, because and they won't be helped anymore. So, I think that people that think that way are filtered out really quickly in a DIY scene. I know that the first tours that we did were all exchange tours. Like, we toured with a band, for instance, from the US in Europe, and we booked the tour here, and we made, we arranged the tour and transportation and everything, and they would return the favor in the US, and and that worked out really well. And that's actually, I think that's the only way for a European punk rock band to go to the US. If you don't have a record out there, or a booker, or whatever, music industry connection. So that's the way to do it. And, of course, you're only limited by how much time you can spend on your own band or on music in general. And that's the part where, of course, you want to help others as well. But, time limitation is the biggest problem. And doing a band self-management and a lot of things yourself, it makes it harder to help others out equally.
Of course.
Yeah, so that's always the dilemma there, to how much you can help others, while you also know that you have that so much time goes into your own project.
Yeah, but I think there are you can find different ways to help them. I'm in the same position. I mean, I used to do a lot of shows in Zwiesel for bands, but I just can't do that anymore because I'm full time with my studio. I have kids now. I have some other side projects that I do, so that's not just impossible to spend the weekends promoting and organizing shows. And I would do a shitty job at it if I would still do it, because I wouldn't have the time to do it properly. But still, when people hit me up about things like that, I can still refer them to people that I know do a great job at it, or I can find something where I can maybe help them or still stay helpful, or it's just different. But I completely agree that as soon as you reach a certain point with your band or music project or whatever you do, it's not as easy as it is for a 20-year-old who is maybe a student or whatever. Like, that's a different thing, of course.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So when you write your songs, that's also something that's really interesting to me. Is there the lyrics first, or is the song first? And how do you get it together? And who's the one doing it in your band?
Most of the time it's me, even though we just finished recording a song that was written by Tone as well. So it's really nice to have another songwriter in the band again. Because back in the day, Ivo, our old bass player, he used to write songs as well. So it's nice to have other people involved in songwriting again as well. But it's not an issue of first music or first lyrics, because I keep notes, and I mean that for lyrics. I mean, I write down ideas or quotes or whatever lyrical things that come to mind that I want to remember. So I have like a notebook and I write everything down in that. But I also have like a audio notebook that when I play guitar and I think, oh, this sounds fun, then I'll record it and I'll put it in a folder on my computer. And when I think I have some cool riffs that I can combine, I'll put them together. I put some drums and some bass to it, and I'll program that, and then it grows. And if it really works well, I'll really make a song into it. And when I have more or less a song instrumental with a start and a finish, then I'll dive into my notes and see if there's a topic that I have more coherent notes for that match the type of song that I'm working on, and then I'll combine these two, and then a lot of frustrating processes start of getting melody lines and words in the right order, and just structuring, what do I want to say and what are the right words and do they fit the melodies and stuff. And that's how songs come about. And what we did for the last album and the singles that we've been doing recently is that this process, I mostly do it on my own, and then as soon as I have really a song from start to finish, including lyrics, I will record demos of that, obviously, and then I'll send it to the rest and to hear what they think of it, and then we start rehearsing the song. But we also, for the previous recordings, we send it out to others, to friends, to people that we think have an interesting opinion on how to create music in the most broad sense of it. We ask them for feedback and to see, what do you think? Is this, does this work? Do you see some stuff that you think could be better? I mean, for the first 4 albums, we never did that, and I wouldn't have wanted to do that for those songs, because, that's the first music that you write or create as a band or as a person. So it has to be you and 100% you. But I think at that moment it was like, okay, I know what I can write and what it will be if I do everything from start to finish. But I was very interested in what we could sound like if we had more people involved in it's not really the writing process, because we write it all ourselves, but the fine tuning, we really like to work with other people as well. So, and I think it helped us as well, not just the end results of the songs, but also me and Tone now as well as songwriters to learn what works in songs and what doesn't work, and maybe what people think that works, but things that we still like to keep our own way, because it's what we like, or what Antillectual is, or however you want to define that. But that's more or less the process of songwriting for us right now. I'm not going to say we're going to continue doing this for the rest of our band life, but yeah, for now I really enjoy starting it up on my own, then doing it together with the band, and then doing it together with some more people and have some more opinions involved.
Awesome. Makes total sense. When you write and record new songs, considering that you don't do albums anymore, do you record one song at a time, or do you batch record a couple of songs and then release them one after the other?
The last 3 recording sessions, we recorded 3 or 4 songs. Because I think, just recording one song, that's so much hassle for only one song.
Yes.
So, but waiting until you have 10 to 15 songs, that are absolutely ready, it just takes a lot of time. I feel that I write faster, or the process is faster when it's only 3 or 4 songs, and when you start recording them, you have a set deadline. And it just, the whole process goes quicker, and I really enjoy that. So, I'd like to do this for a while.
Yeah, and I'm also asking because I think if you don't do as many at a time, you can keep it more fresh, like also sonically. Because like if you do it in one big recording session, of course you can get some variation in from song to song, but still they're gonna sound pretty cohesive probably, or at least somewhat similar. And if you like spread it up into different sessions, you can also keep it fresh sonically.
Definitely, and you have more time because you only have 3 or 4 songs to focus on instead of 10 or 15. So you can put more energy in each song, and that is the part I really like, because I know that if I have to spread my attention, the end result for all the individual songs will not be as good as when it's a smaller amount of songs. So yeah, I really like that focus that you get from only a handful of songs.
Yeah, agreed. Where do you see Antillectual going musically? Are you open for different elements or changing it up? Because after such a long period of time, as you said, like you got to keep things fresh and you don't want to get bored. Is there anything you're already thinking of or that you've already like implemented? What does the future look like for the sound of Antillectual?
Well, I think that's the dilemma of to your own creativity and your own taste. I think we try to do our range of music as broad as possible, but I don't think we're going to evolve through time. Like I don't think we're going to be a totally different band in a couple of years, as I don't think we're totally different band compared to 10 years ago. But what I really enjoy about our band is that on the albums that we released and the songs that we record, they go from pretty mellow and slow and quiet to fast, loud, and aggressive. So, we don't have one album that is really fast from start to end, and we don't have an album that is really slow from start to end. I like to have that dynamic within an album or a recording session, if you like, and even within songs. But I don't think, we're not going to be a reggae band in 10 years. We're not going to have hip hop on our albums, I think. But we do experiment with different instrumentation, that's for sure. I mean, we've had strings on a previous album, and we do a lot with piano and keys and organ stuff on songs, even though it might be very subtle in the mix, but there's a lot of extra instrumentation we always use. And I think we'll continue to do that as well. And we are going to start, this is a bit news, to try that out live as well. And we're not going to add band members, but we are going to see if we can get any of that extra instrumentation that is on the album. We try to have that included as well. Backing tracks. Yeah, but then I don't want to be a 3-people band that's outnumbered, or how do you want to call that, sounded by the backing track. Yeah. But I do like, also because we on our albums and our songs we do have a lot of samples and quotes, and we're going to try to have those playing on the show as well. Cool. If we have a sample within a song, you will hear that live as well now, because it's part of the song, and I think it makes sense to have that live played as well. So that's something we're experimenting with right now. And we're going to try it, and if we like it, we're going to keep it. And if we don't like it, then we'll get rid of it as well. But that's something, that's something that hopefully keeps it fresh and exciting and interesting for us, and of course for the people that have to listen to us.
To listen to us.
Exactly. Well, once you bought your ticket, you're going to have to listen to us. No, but I think maybe it's more live, since you asked about recordings, but I think that's one element of keeping it fresh for us as well.
Awesome. I assume you play with a click live, or at least Rikus does?
Yeah, he does indeed.
Yeah, because that makes life a lot easier with samples and backing tracks and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, no, we actually started doing that a couple of years ago. I think.
Yeah,
I'm very bad at remembering years and how long it's been exactly. But that was also a step. Like, okay, are we going to play to a click track now? Because it really makes it sound really tight, and it can be easier for drummers to know. Okay, to be consistent in play the song on the same pace on every gig. Whether it's a shit hot, crazy intimate show, or whether it's a mellow festival setting, that the song will be on the pace it should be. And it was an experiment, and we really appreciated that. So we kept on doing that as well. And that's something that that was really scary to start off with when we first did our first show with a click track, but I really enjoy having it now.
Yeah, I always thought that's a good idea. Unfortunately, none of my bands ever did that, but I kind of wish we did.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
Then again, I don't want to be dogmatic about it. And I think that there's some songs on our set list that we don't have a click for. So just to keep them a bit more dynamic or more authentic, I don't know. It just feels better without a click. And also because we have to program the whole set list for the click track to make, to have the right click at the right time. But if people have requests for songs, we're not going to say, oh, sorry, we cannot play that song now because the click track is not programmed for that. We're going to play a song without a click track because, it's more fun to play requests than just stick to the click.
Yeah, of course. I have one very specific question now left, and that's, I've always wanted to ask this.
Okay.
Because when I discovered your band, and that's probably something that it's only of interest to me, but anyway, I want to ask it because I wanted to ask that for a long time. So
okay, you make me curious.
When I've discovered your band, I think it was, probably, I don't know, I'm bad with years as well, but like shortly after Testimony came out.
Okay, yeah.
I think, so like 10 years ago or something?
Yeah, it's from 2008, that album, so...
Sometime around that year, I think I discovered your band, or at least that's what I remember. But what I noticed was, I loved that record, but I noticed that although the lyrics and the vocals were so important in a way, and it's always been a critical and important part in you, to me at least, with your band, I thought that they were very, very quiet and kind of buried on that record. And then the interesting thing is on Start From Scratch, the next full length, the total opposite is the case, and the vocals are so upfront and loud and on top of the mix. And I was wondering, was that a conscious decision, or why was that? That's something, I don't know why, but that I immediately recognized that when I listened to Start From Scratch, and I'm like, oh, all of a sudden there's vocals all over the place, whereas before that they were kind of quiet.
Yeah, well, I think in retrospect, I think it helps to look back on records in reaction to the album before. So I think for Testimony, we had as a mission to make an album sound as loud as possible, because the album before that, Silencing Civilization, which was our first recording ever, or first full-length recording ever, we were happy about it, but we thought it wasn't aggressive or how do you say that? Impactful enough. Yeah. It lacked a bit of, I don't know, a hit or force, So for Testimony, we recorded with someone else. We told him, we want to sound loud and we want it to be mastered loud and everything has to be, on 10. So that was the mission for that album. And it was not a conscious decision to put the vocals down or relatively low or, with it really down in the mix. Maybe it was my vocal qualities of that time, and that might have improved with Start From Scratch after that. But it's funny that you say that, because it's recorded with the same person, Nico van Montfort, actually, it's Rika's his brother.
Oh, okay.
And he recorded both Testimony and Start From Scratch. And I think that I think we decided, okay, Testimony was really loud. Now we've done that. Now we want to go back to something a bit more natural sounding and maybe a bit more poppy. Also, Starts From Scratch Testimony was the last album with Ivo, our original bass player. And Starts From Scratch was the first album we recorded with Tom, who is also the singer for Smashed Statues.
Yeah,
having Tom in the band gave us the opportunity to become a bit more melodic and a bit more poppy is not the right word, but maybe accessible, or to do more with vocals, I think. So that resulted in an album, with not sounding as loud, not being as aggressive, and more focusing on melodies and maybe vocals indeed. So I don't have a too clear image of how we did that or what the mission was for that one, but it might explain what you noticed about those albums.
Yeah, it does. It totally does.
Yeah.
And I appreciated it because, again, it was fresh and different. But I was just wondering, because the difference was so significant to me, it immediately stood out to me. And I was always wondering why that was. But yeah, that makes sense, of course.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks for noticing and pointing it out, because it didn't occur to me that way. But it's always so hard to listen to your own stuff and then see how to evaluate it. So I like hearing other people talk about our records and, also be critical about it and say, well, this is better on that one, being honest about what you hear. I mean, that's the only way you're going to help other people, if you're going to be honest about what you think and not just give them compliments, because you can only learn from criticism and not from compliments, I think.
I think so as well, yeah. As long as it's constructive, it's all good, yeah.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
It always sounds, when you talk about that, it always sounds like this, like you're really close friends or like kind of a big family within the band, because like there's Rico's brother and then you and Rico's are in the band together from the beginning, and it always sounds very... Yeah, it just sounds cool, and like you're really best friends. Do you ever have, when you tour that much and like with a band that's been there for such a long time, do you ever have like cabin fever or moments where you just can't stand each other? Is that a thing?
We're married to each other. That's the only way of looking at it. Without being ridiculous, if you're in a band with 3 people and you tour a lot and you're, indeed we're in a small van together for weeks or for a longer period of time, I think it comes close to marriage, or at least a very close relationship where you also know what to expect from people. So every one of us gets grumpy on tour, or when, you've slept not long enough, or, when some things don't go well. But Rikus and I would not have made it in this band for 15 years if we weren't able to talk things over and talk things out and accept things we don't like of each other, talk about that and make sure we're on the same page when it comes to important decisions. And we're only 3 people, so we discuss everything within the band all together. We have the goal to be a 100% democratic band, to decide things together. And if people don't have an opinion on a certain issue, that's fine. But if they do, we'll just discuss it with the 3 of us. And I think that's the only way to make sure you have a healthy relationship and you can survive the marriage of being a touring band. But then again, we've had some band members leave as well. There were never people that left because they really didn't agree with how we did things, or they didn't like us, or we got into a fight. It was, more the process of constant touring, which was too much to ask from people, time-wise. And they shifted to priorities of having kids or focusing more on their working careers and stuff like that. But I think communication is what it's all about. I mean, the band Adhesive from Sweden already said it, and it's really true. Especially when you're in a band, make sure you discuss everything among each other and make sure you're on the same page, or get on the same page if you're not. Is that an answer to your question?
Absolutely. And then communication is the key to this, I think, as you said. And also, I think knowing what you get yourself into, like from the first place, like if you're as you said, it's a matter of priorities, and if you make the band a priority and do as much as you do over such a long period of time, you kind of have to make arrangements, you have to make compromises, you have to talk stuff out, and you just have to know what you're doing. And if everybody's on the same page with that, then I think you can do it. It's just that just shouldn't be a conflict of like priorities and stuff, I think.
No, that's true. And make sure to this sounds cheesy, but to refresh that page also, because, you start on the same page, but a year after, or a couple of months after, or a couple of years after, just make sure you evaluate the things you have been doing in the last couple of months or years, and, look ahead as well. So we also have band meetings that we don't play music, and we just discuss how things have gone and how things are going to go in the next months, and our bucket list and the things we want to do, and our communication and cooperation, how that goes. So that's another way of taking seriously what you're doing and getting the most out of it.
Yes. Speaking about bucket list, what's going on right now in the Antillectual world? What's happening this year? What are you up to? Where do you play, and what do you release? How frequently can we expect new music? All that kind of stuff.
I'll start with the releases because that's the most obvious. The first upcoming single, as said, it's July 9th. It's going to be the If You're Not Outraged, You're Not Paying Attention song. And then I think in November, we will release another song. That's going to be another single we'll release. Probably somewhere early 2020, but we haven't decided a date yet. We'll release the next single because it's really a series of singles, so it makes sense to do one early 2020 again. And touring wise, yeah, as I said, it's not announced yet, but we're going to go to Turkey in November and to Finland in October. I'm really excited about that cool. Because it's new places, new countries, and that's always very exciting. And other than that, we have a shitload of German shows coming up because we mostly play Germany. I mean, I think 90% of our shows are outside of the Netherlands, and there's at least 50, but maybe even 70 or I don't know % of the shows are in Germany. So we're going to continue to do that, and we're working on some touring plans that I cannot really say much more about, but I hope to do some really cool shows with a German band in 2020, and we hope to do a tour in the rest of Europe, so outside of the Netherlands and Germany, spring 2020 as well. But as said, that's still a draft idea. So yeah, that's all I can say for now. But we have some really cool festivals coming up in the next weeks. For Conrad Fest, for instance,
that's a great one.
Yeah, is that really far from Cecil?
No, not really.
It's Bavaria,
2.5
right?
hours. 2.5 hours, 3 hours, something like that.
Oh, okay, yeah, but it's a really fun, small, cozy festival in the middle of the woods. So I'm really looking forward to go back there. We have a support show for Descendants coming up, which I'm really that's a bucket list right there. I mean,
definitely,
it's Descendants, and it's also in the Melkweg. Which is like the venue I've seen so many bands play. And we've played there before, but it was always in the smaller, the old hall, and this will be in the big hall. So it's going to be really nice to play there with one of my all-time favorite bands. Really looking forward to that a lot. And we get to play with Propagandi in Hamburg in July as well. So it's going to be a fun, full summer either way.
That sounds awesome. Yeah. And one thing that I've noticed now is it's not as frequently as I thought it would be, like with your single releases. When you say now July, then November, and then early 2020. So it's not that you like do a single every month or two or so.
No, because we want to do it well. I mean, we could release more frequently, but we want to make a video at least. We want to put in, we some promotional efforts as well. I think that's the only way to get some attention and to get the music really out there. Yeah. I also think that if you do one every month, that people will think, oh, I'm going to skip this one. I'll catch them again in a month. So I think we choose for a bit more quality instead of quantity. And we do 3 per year, I say, in general.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
So you want every song to be heard, basically, really heard. So
yeah, that's also why we really chose for this approach, because
exactly
we released 5 albums up to now, and we thought, well, let's change it up a bit. And we thought, well, in this day and age, if you release music, people are really into it. But the week after, there's a new discovery playlist on Spotify, and people's attention has shifted. So if you release music, it's hard to grasp their attention with more than one song, and the attention span will be shorter.
Yes,
that's why it made sense for us to think, well, okay, let's not do full albums, let's do single songs, and let's do it more frequently. So that's why we decided to not record an album, but do batches of songs and release them one by one.
Yeah, and I also think even if it's maybe not as much songs in the same period of time as with a full-length record, I think still people will listen to more songs of you, because when you put an album out, like let's say you have an album cycle of 2 or 3 years or something like that, which is a lot, and then which is pretty quick. But let's say you do that and you have 10 songs on it, then typically only 2 or 3 or maybe 4 songs really are the ones that end up in playlists or get listened to a lot, and the rest are kind of overlooked. So you maybe within an album cycle usually have like 3 to 4 or whatever songs that really get the attention, whereas with your method over a period of 3 years you can have 9 songs and every single one of them gets the attention and gets heard. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's another reason why we chose this approach. But and also because, you know, when we wrote songs for Engage, which came out in 2016, we started writing those in, you know, the first ones at least in 2013. So it takes 3 years to be released. And, you know, if you're writing political songs and you write about current events and issues that are, you know, important at maybe a smaller period of time, it's very nice that we can now write a song, record it and release it within a couple of months instead of having to wait 3 years to present it to the world. And maybe, you know, an issue has lost the well, not interest, but at least it's not as urgent as it was at the time of writing. So that's really something I appreciate of this approach to writing and releasing music as well.
I didn't even think of that, but that's another one, of course. Yeah. Makes total sense. Yeah, of course. So where do people find you online? Where do you start? Where do you go?
It all depends where people are online. I mean, we're obviously on all social media, like the Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And we try to have all our music available through Spotify, YouTube, Bandcamp, iTunes. Like these are all those services. But we also have like a website for the older people that are listening, Antillectual.com, which also has all our music on it, and also our lyrics and liner notes. Other than that,
tour dates.
Tour date. Oh yeah, tour date. Of course. Well, again, we try to have those up on Facebook and our website as well, and we try to, you know, send out tour posters or put them online every now and then to keep people up to date with where they can find us and where they can see us. But our website is always, we make sure it's up to date, because I know that not a lot of people use websites anymore, but I think they are the most honest and direct way of communicating, because, you know, if I post something on our website, it will be up there and not, you know, disappear in our timeline or not reach the people that want to see it. So if people want to know about us, go check our website. It might not have every fart we've set forth in the last week, but at least it will have the most important information, and it will always be up to date.
So the tour dates will all be there as well?
Definitely, yes.
Everything in one place. Yeah, I think the website is an important thing still. I'm one of those people that truly believe that, because, you know, Facebook changes the rules tomorrow and then you're screwed. So,
yeah, exactly. You know, and that's also why we value our newsletter, like the email newsletter you mentioned earlier as well. I mean, people might not, you know, what happened to MySpace could happen to Facebook as well. And then, you know, you can have 1 million fans on Facebook, and those are all gone when Facebook is gone. So that's why we really like to bother people in their inboxes as well, if they subscribe to it, that is.
Yeah, and I can highly recommend doing that, because it's not that often. It's not one of those newsletters where you get an email every day or every other day. And it's nicely formatted, compact information. You know what's going on. You know the tour dates. You know the when there's a single or video out. So it's not annoying. It's just all the information you need if you're interested in the band. So I would highly recommend subscribing to that newsletter.
Cool, thanks. Yeah, it's something Rikus works on a lot. It makes something really nice out of that. So it's much appreciated if you or anyone else appreciates that we put those out.
Yeah. Is there anything left that's important to you right now that you want to promote or say something about it, like whatever it might be? Thank
you very much for having me. That's the one thing that comes to mind. I really appreciate, you know, this type of conversation. I'm not going to call it an interview or a podcast, but it's really nice to talk with you and have, you know, talk about those issues and our band. And it's funny to dive into my own memory, how terrible it is to think about how we did things in 2005 and 2008. And yeah, and I still have to ask my mom a couple of things, how it was back then. Thanks for doing such a in-depth conversation, basically. And I hope people enjoy it as well. And for information about us, visit our website or follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and you will find what you want over there. And yeah, this will be out on July 3rd, and our single will be out on July 9th. So you'll have to wait a couple more days, but I hope people will find it and appreciate it and let us know what they think of it. Our new single, July 9th.
Yeah, exactly. Let them know. Let me know. I'll forward every email or comment, and I will put everything we were talking about in the liner notes for you to look up. And I'm curious as well. I'm curious for the feedback because I've only ever done one English episode for the podcast so far.
Oh.
With Greg Benedikt from Trial. All the other ones are German. So I'm not exactly... it's in kind of an experiment, but I'm not exactly sure how my audience reacts to it. But I know for a fact that a lot of people outside of Germany have already asked me to do episodes in English. So we'll see how that goes. I hope the feedback will be cool and helpful for me as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, then even more thanks for having me, because I did see a lot of German guests already on your podcast, but I didn't know I was only the second non-German speaking guest. So that's really awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. I enjoyed. I was so glad that you hit me up actually, because you were on my list like from the beginning of the list of people that I wanted to contact for the podcast. So it was absolutely amazing to have you reach out to me and do this. And it was like a quick thing. We talked about that last week, and now we're already recording. So
yeah, why not? Yeah, awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, then thank you for taking the time again, and then all the best like for you, your band, and I hope everything goes as planned, and you will continue doing what you do for another 15 years or more.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll see. I'm not going to sign any contract, but yeah, we'll do our best.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, then have a good day and talk soon, and hope we see each other again at the show sometime.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
So that's it for today's episode. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed our conversation, and I'm completely aware of the fact that the political discussions and topics are always a little difficult and can be off-putting to some, or can be annoying or boring to some of you, but I really hope that's not the case. And I just think, as we are talking about the hardcore and punk rock scene, I just think that this is an essential part of it. That's part of the deal. You can't separate the two. And I also agree with what Willem said about him being a political person. I think we all are. There's no such thing as an unpolitical person, because every decision you make is somewhat political. Everything you buy, everything you do has an impact on your surroundings, on the people around you, on the culture. And I think it's for every person, it's a good thing to be aware, to be open-minded, and to think about stuff like that from time to time. And we might not have done a great job at this in this conversation, and like, who knows, but that's not the point. I think the point is to have this discussion at all. And if you felt like we've said things, or I said things that are wrong, or if you maybe misunderstood something, just don't hesitate to ask or to write me an email, and like, we can clarify. And I'm always happy to have open discussions about topics like that, although sometimes it's a bit difficult, but I'm always open to do that. Also, please excuse the lack of flow in this conversation, which is due to the fact that English is not my native language. I'm pretty confident talking to somebody in English, but it's still not my native language. So it might be hard to follow what I'm trying to say at sometimes. So please excuse that, and I hope you could still get the message, or the essence of what we were talking about. Other than that, if you want to check out the liner notes with the links to everything we said, with the links to the Antillectual videos, the tour dates, all that kind of stuff, please go to benedikthain.com/ORP25. That's BENEDIKTHAIN.com/ORP for Outback Recordings Podcast 25. benedikthain.com/ORP25. That's the link with the show notes. And then there's benedikthain.com, obviously, if you want to check out my mixing services and what I do in the studio and my full-time job here every day. So that you might want to check out if that's of interest to you. Then, of course, there is my other project, theselfrecordingband.com, where I help DIY bands who record on their own get great, amazing sounding results in their rehearsal room. That's a project that I started, and I wanted to start that for a long time, and now I finally did. And it's been going so well. People are getting results. The people that I work with as a mixing engineer deliver way better quality, and it's so much fun. I'm putting out content regularly, depending on my studio schedule, whatever my schedule allows, but I'm trying to do it as regularly and often as possible. I send out helpful emails. I'm there answering questions. I do some Facebook Lives, all that kind of stuff, just helping bands get better recordings on their own. So that's it for today. Oh yeah, and if you want to check out some of the other episodes, the link is benedikthein.com/podcast. Now that's it. Enough of that. Thanks again for listening. Hope you will tune in for future episodes. Leave us a review on iTunes. Email me at podcast@outbackrecordings.com if you have any questions. That's it. I'm out. Thanks. Have a nice day. Goodbye.